who has kindly accepted our invitation to inaugurate our conference. It is a presence which is significant in more than one respect. It not only expresses the high priority it gives to scientific research in our country, in particular economic research, to which he has himself contributed in the past, but it also reflects the long, warm, personal relationship he has had with Piero Trappa himself, to whose biography he has notably contributed, as he has recalled for us in his own biography. I think that would be, it's already there. Okay. This is a summary of what I am going to say, just since the thing will be maybe a bit complicated. I shall start with two preliminary observations, which will be at the basis of what I will say about the present state of the capital provinces which began in the period after the war. These two preliminary observations concern capital as a symbol magnitude and its key role at the very origin of neoclassical theory. Before being used for our main purpose, concerning the present state of the capital controversy, these observations will turn out to offer the occasion for a brief consideration of some provocative views recently advanced by Nobel Prize Professor Sen on the nature of Sraffa's contribution. We shall then return to our two observations in order to develop our main line of argument today. The conclusion will be that the later stages of the controversy have been marred by a multiplicity of misunderstandings, which are mostly still waiting to be cleared, and which explain the present pose of the controversy, with which I believe to be a halfway pose for the critique of neoclassical theory. It is a pose which has, however, engendered two misleading beliefs. That the neoclassical demand and supply can be formulated so as to be immune from the inconsistencies of capital of the previous formulation. This leads to misleading beliefs. Second, a feeling that since those reformulations would confirm the essential validity of neoclassical demand and supply apparatus, they would also justify some use of the old concept as a workable approximation. What we shall say then will incidentally negate or qualify the frequent statement that the critique of neoclassical theory through the conception of capital, though successful on a purely analytical level, has had no effect on dominant neoclassical theory. I shall contend it has drastically changed and in a way which may well endanger its long-time survival. My first preliminary, so we come us to the two observations. My first preliminary observation concerns a basic feature of capital goods in a market economy. In the eyes of their owners, physically heterogeneous capital goods are perfect substitutes in proportion to their values. As Vadas had lucidly pointed out nearly a century and a half ago, capital goods are demanded by savers as elements of a single commodity, perpetual net income. It is indeed the single commodity whose existence we imply when we assume competitive arbitrage to tend to realize a uniform effective rate of riskless return on the price of capital goods. The reciprocal of that rate is nothing but the price of the Bavarian commodity, that of a unit of perpetual net income. And little changes, if more in keeping with contemporary intertemporal general equilibrium, its finite horizon and changing prices, we refer to income for next year. The second of my preliminary observation is that it is this simple commodity of quantity of capital rooted in the experience of wealth owners and of the firms in which they invest that has been the key to the passage from the first to the second of the two approaches to economics, which in the course of, with some simplification, can be said to have dominated the theory of distribution and relative prices in succession since the systematic inception of economic theorizing in the 18th century, the classical and the marginalist or neoclassical approaches. To the present audience, we do not need to belong to recall these two broad approaches. The classical one, where the idea of a surplus of which the community can dispose without infringing in the possibility of reproduction, has engendered the theory of distribution and relative prices, which runs from the physiocrats to Marx and Thrapper, and the later, still dominant neoclassical approach, which, after a half-century of transition from the classical theorizing, is crystallized with the marginalist revolution and is founded on the substitutability between factors of production and on the demand and supply forces for factors and commodities which are made to descend from that substitutability. What requires more words is the sense in which I can say that the notion of capital as the single Barbadian commodity, as we may call it, has been the key to the passage from the classical to the neoclassical approach. The marginalist or neoclassical approach arose essentially out of classical land rent reformulated in terms of homogeneous labor and land. And as extending to the division between wages and profits, extending to the division between wages and profits, thereby replacing the notion of surplus by which the division had been explained by the classical economists. That extension was in fact founded on assuming a variability in the proportion of capital to labor analogous to the classical one of labor plus capital to land. It is a variability understood to be stemmed from either the alternative between the methods available for producing directly or indirectly the same consumption good, or from the methods for producing outputs of alternative consumption goods. Now, the fact that in both cases the alternative production processes involved differ generally by the kinds of capital goods used rather than by the proportion of labor in which